speaker, team composition in this debate stands for the fact that search engines like Google, like Bing, should never do cooperation with the state regarding censorship. I'm going to frame this debate, then I'm going to present our case in 3 points. The first two being responsibility and effectiveness, and the third one, which Elizabeth is going to talk about, being backlash. But let's start what team composition is talking about here. We are talking about Western liberal democracies and the governments cooperating with the search engines to censor different results for the search engines. Now, what team composition stands for is two things. That Google should never do cooperation with the state regarding censorship, so that they can actually remove some search results, for example, from the internet, since they deem them unworthy or not adequate. Secondly, we strongly support censoring for hate speech, for example, by publications themselves. For example, the newspapers, we support the fact that they censor hate speech.
Sir.
No, thank you. Now, let's go on. What are the two important facts of this today? The standings for team composition. We see that the responsibility lies with the state and the media, not the search engine. Now, the search engine doesn't have an inherent responsibility to actually censor anything. Those two things, that responsibility lies with the state and the media, and I'm going to explain how. But let's start with the media and why they have to deal with the content themselves. But the media themselves create the content we are talking about. So thank you. For example, let's take an article, right? When it has hate speech in it, they have to control the content themselves. The search engine has no real responsibility regarding that fact. They create the content, they publish the content, and they read the content. Right? They should be responsible for the fact, for the things that happen regarding it. They should actually control the content themselves.
Point of information, sir.
Yes.
The very point of you strongly censoring hate speech already concedes the fact that you recognize that there is going to be dangerous material on the web.
Yes, we absolutely agree. There is dangerous material on the web, but that fact goes to the situation has to be controlled by the government and the media. Now we're talking why the government has an inherent responsibility for this. Now, the government itself puts restrictions on different things. For example, we do not allow people to share child pornography, right? We don't allow people to do hate speech on the internet. Now, we actually don't allow these things on the internet. For example, articles about hate speech. We don't allow articles regarding hate speech, right? So you can't actually call out people to actually go to the streets and beat up different people. Now, the fact is that the governments themselves have put restrictions on this, and therefore they actually control the content themselves. They say what goes and what doesn't.
Sir.
Now, thank you. Now, how the search engine relates to this fact is that the government uses these same search engines to actually push their agenda. Now, what these search engines are inherently, they just document the results on the internet, they put them together and offer them to people. For example, take a news. You have different newspapers. They have different newspapers, and for example, if a person goes to that newsstand, decides to buy a newspaper, and the government already controls what newspapers there are, what content is allowed in those newspapers. The newsstand has no inherent responsibility regarding this, what content there is. The newsstand is only offering the people the information they want, and gives them the choice of the choice of content. So therefore, if the government actually regulates the content anyway, if the media has some responsibility regarding the content, and the search engines, the only thing they do, no thank you, is regarding the fact that they document this, they put it out for people, they have no inherent responsibility to censor anything. Let's go to effectiveness and why actually censoring through the government has no real inherent effect. Now, as for the previous POI, we said, yeah, there are dangerous things on the internet. But the thing is, what are we talking about? I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about the deep web, and I'm going to talk about government. Okay, what is the deep web? We see that the deep web inherently is the biggest portion of the internet that isn't accessible through regular search engines. People cannot access it by Google or Bing, for example, but they can by using different web browsers, for example. Now, the thing with these things... The thing with these deep webs, the deep web is that the worst things on the internet happen there. The sharing of child pornography, for example, the sale of drugs, the sale of weapons, right? Those things happen in the deep web, not on the regular internet, for example, for what Google offers. Now, what we can derive from this is that if Google, or for example, has no control what happens in the deep web since the deep web is not the regular part of the internet which Google controls, right? We can derive from this that the impact of all of this will be so low that if the good search engines have no real responsibility regarding this, why should we hold them responsible or make them and force them to regulate the content? No, thank you. If the impact of this will be so low, since we don't allow. Okay, now to the second point of this, the government. Now, as previously stated, the government regulates the information anywhere. The government doesn't allow the sharing of child pornography on the regular internet. We don't allow the sale or sharing of the sale of guns, drugs, etc. Now, what this does is that no, thank you. If these same governments are actually prohibiting this regardless, they're prohibiting the self-charge on the internet. Therefore, these same governments actually take the means into their own hand. They solve this problem regardless. Now, if we actually accept this fact, the impact of this will be very low regardless, since the only thing that we will fix regarding censorship might be that we might remove some hate speech. But as previously stated, as previously stated, the media already deals with this. The government already puts restrictions on this in a second, and the media already regulates the content. Yes, please.
What you fail to recognize that it's impossible for the government to regulate this content without the help of search engines. Because it's very easy for me to now go back home, publish a hate speech article and post it on the internet. Therefore, search engines...
Okay, I got your point. No, that's false. Governments can actually regulate the media on a constant basis. They can say what goes not. That's the reason we have hate speech laws. We don't allow people to actually go on the internet and post up callings to go and beat immigrants since they feel like that. We don't allow that for certain reasons, and the government has control over that. That's the same reason, for example, so the point of this is, if the government actually regulate this anyway, they ban, for example, forums that publish hate speech, for example. The deep web has the biggest portion of the bad things on the internet happens in the deep web. The search engines have no control over that. And as previously stated, the responsibility of the search engines is non-existent. They just put out the information, they make the information available, but they don't create the content or they don't regulate the content. The government and the media does. And if you acknowledge these two facts, we can derive from this that using censorship through search engines is not justified, and that no search engine should do cooperation with the state regarding this censorship. So for these reasons, I beg you to propose.
Ladies and gentlemen, the internet today has become an incredibly dangerous place. It's become a place where radical groups can expand their spheres of influence, a place where dangerous influences grow, and a place where people become vulnerable. We want to cut down on this. So what do we stand for today in our stance? We don't stand for all forms of censorship. We stand for censoring the things that are a clear threat to society. And this includes things like terrorism, extremist groups, child pornography. Things that actually harm society. And this is already being done in the status quo to three main ways. First, where the search engine itself is conducting the censorship. And this is a very impersonal process, where things like Google, Bing, or Microsoft filter out certain keywords through the use of algorithms or machines. The second way this is done is where the search engine is the mechanism through which censorship is being completed. For example, parents wanting to filter what their child can access on the internet, filter it by adjusting the settings there. Thirdly, we see how search engines are bases to help the authorities, where, for example, if one was to search a questionable website repeatedly for over 1 week, then it's going to be reported to authorities, and authorities currently use this specific mechanism in how they fight crime and lower down rates in their country. As long as we prove today that we better protect society through censorship, we win this debate. Because protecting society is the first priority of any government there. Before I move on to my constructives, let's move on to some points of rebuttal. Firstly, in their first speaker, they told us that they support the censorship of hate speech. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge concession on their part, because when they tell us that they want to censor certain things, it's exactly what we're saying in opposition. It's precisely because we want to censor things like hate speech that our model comes into place. They're not being principally consistent on their side. It's a huge concession already. Secondly, they told us that the media has absolutely no responsibility to actually censor the material there. But this is untrue. One, the media is the best way for governments and the media to actually cut down all the negative material that's on there. Why? Because they have the best access to it. They are the most effective way to actually cut down on the negative influences on the internet. Why? We already see it now, when things like Google, Bing, Yahoo already censor their search results because they recognize that it's only through them that this can be censored. So, they've also told us about newsstands and how they're giving us this example about how newsstands, when they publish it, they're not responsible for what the people read. Ladies and gentlemen, if I was to read a newspaper and I saw negative influences there, the newspaper itself is responsible for what I'm reading. It's not true on their side. The media isn't responsible for what's going on other people. The media is responsible, ladies and gentlemen. So then they told us, no thank you sir. They talked to us about the deep web, right? And how on their side, they eliminate the deep. Ladies and gentlemen, when you don't censor your internet, when you don't allow your media to censor it, then things on your deep web start arising on your mainstream web under their policy. So what happens then, ladies and gentlemen, is that all the negative influences, all the harms that they talked about present on the deep web come about on your Google searches, your Yahoo searches, because they refuse to censor the material down there. What they are doing on their side, ladies and gentlemen, is making the harms incredibly huge. So then, they've talked to us how governments are the best ways for us to do this. They've never proved to us why, and I've already shown you in my previous rebuttal why media is the best way to actually do this. The only way the governments can actually cut down all the negative influences is if your governments would work towards the media, which is the status quo today, which is what opposition is standing for today. So we've already proved to you how their side leads to the increase in the negative impacts on the internet, and their side increases the negative influences on society. Without further ado, let's move on to my constructive arguments. I'm going to be talking to you about how their side cuts down, how our side cuts down the radical groups, and also about how the right to safety overwhelms the right to privacy. My second speaker is going to be talking to you about how we save more lives and how we provide safer grounds for children to use the internet. So on to my first point. Here we must accept the premise that the face of terrorism has fundamentally changed to the internet. This means that groups like ISIS, groups like the Al-Qaeda, has shifted to the web to start recruiting people to spread their message as a result. We already see this in how they use Twitter, how they use Facebook, and how they communicate through the use of websites to make sure that other people all around the world can gain the extremist ideologies and learn from it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's extremely easy on the internet to fall prey to such websites. Let's give you an example. If you're sitting down in a bedroom all alone, the computer screen is right in front of you, and you're searching on the internet, and all these search results come out of all these radical groups, you're going to be extremely easily influenced by the material that's presented to you there. This is the very reason why the rate of terrorism has been rising. So, because of their model, we have no censors on the internet. These radical groups can continually use the web as a basis to negatively influence other people and spread their extremist views. What this means is that people under their model are extremely vulnerable, and they're easily influenced on the internet. Yes?
We can actually ban those sites. That doesn't mean we have to use Google to actually remove this. We can just ban them.
When you ban those sites, is what we're standing for. We want to censor the things on the internet, and as I already proved to you, the media is the best way for us to censor these internets. Clearly, you haven't heard that very properly. So what happens is that the internet becomes an incredibly unsafe place, and terrorist groups are going to take advantage of this to recruit more and more people. As a result, we're giving more legitimacy to such extremist groups on their side, and these groups become more and more dangerous over time. We already see this. Now hundreds and hundreds of people across the world have flocked to Syria and Iraq to join these groups. We're talking about 16-year-old girls from France moving all the way across the world to join such groups. So what happens when we censor them under our model? These terrorist groups are not going to be able to spread their messages so much their views online. So people are prevented from doing it. As a result, people are going to be more protected from the threat of being influenced by them. When we have less people recruited by terror, less people joining such parties, we set a strong wall against such groups. Furthermore, we set a principle ground that we don't stand for such radical behavior. So as a result, we protect the people in these groups because we prevent them from being influenced so much, and ultimately, we're declining the rise of such terrorist groups by preventing them from spreading their radical messages across the internet. Let's move on to my second point on how the right to safety triumphs the right to privacy, and it's a principal point. So currently, we curtail some rights in society to protect others. This means that we sacrifice the rights of some for the rights of the majority of society. Where do we see this? We see this when we impose seatbelt laws, speeding laws, because things like that actually impose a direct threat to society, and by imposing laws on that, we're protecting the majority. We recognize, ladies and gentlemen, that privacy is a very nice thing to have. But ladies and gentlemen, under our side, the individual privacy, firstly, is minimal. Why? Because as I already told you, it's an impersonal process. We're using machines. Secondly, we're only restricting those parts of the internet that are extremely harmful to society. But when we do a balance of the rights, ladies and gentlemen, when we balance which is more important, privacy or safety, we choose safety. Why? Because through censorship, we're protecting society. We're protecting huge amounts of people from the very dangerous internet that's out there. And ladies and gentlemen, the right to life is above all other rights. It's the most important thing in our society. And so when, through censorship, we protect this life, on the comparative, we already see that the right to safety triumphs the right to society, triumphs the right to privacy, and as a result, we need to censor the internet to protect society. With that, I'm extremely proud to oppose.
Ladies and gentlemen, the opposition has done two things today. Firstly, they have been trying to put us in a situation where we have to protect the absolute. We don't think this is the case. We do acknowledge the fact that child pornography is bad, ISIS kind of sucks, and we don't have to protect showing this kind of material to the people. Secondly, they have fundamentally misunderstood how censorship works. They talk about Twitter and Facebook and terrorism and all those kinds of things, and they say that a model will solve the problem. Ladies and gentlemen, it will not, because they can't ban the content. They can't do anything with Twitter or Facebook. All they can do under their model is to regulate by the search engine. Do not show that material when you're searching for certain keywords. We don't think this is efficient. We would rather have Twitter dealing with that bad situation themselves, because we think we can. It is firstly their main responsibility, as we see there, the media channel directly publishing the material, and secondly, we don't think it is the responsibility of the search engine to regulate something. So, a few points of rebuttal, and then I'll move on to my own extensive argument about backlash and how the system they are proposing would backfire. So first, they say that media is responsible, and they kind of misunderstood what we're saying. We are saying that yes, media is responsible. So if I am a publisher of a newspaper, I am kind of responsible what is in that newspaper. It is my duty to regulate what is in there, and I have the government to kind of set some kind of standards for me. You know, we don't think hate speech is okay. We don't think you should put that in your newspaper. Now, who isn't responsible is the vendor selling the newspaper, because that is exactly what kind of role, say, Google or Bing play in this kind of situation. They are just the collective of information. They do not provide the information. They can't edit the So we think that is exactly why the duty lies within the media itself, say some newspapers or any kind of forum or whatever. We think the government is already regulating that, and we don't think they have proven to us why the search engine should be concerned as well. We don't think it is their responsibility. So now, they talk about the deep web, and the deep web would somehow now move to the regular part of internet under our model. We say that is inherently not true, because the second you move your illegal drug dealing business to the regular web, you will go to jail. We don't see that happening, and we don't think that no one would ever in a second would ever have the kind of situation they want to be.
But what you fundamentally misunderstand is that we're not living in the age of newspapers anymore. People get their information from articles published on the internet, which is very hard for the governments to clamp down. Therefore, you need the help of search engines to do so.
Exactly. We don't have paper newspapers anymore. We have internet newspapers. We have online newspapers, and these are the media we are talking about. These are the entities that, in our opinion, have the responsibility. We have been talking to you about it for 1.5 speech now. It is not the search engine itself who publishes information. It is just it is like a library. It doesn't control what's in it. It just shows you everything there is. And we think that if a really bad and hateful book would be in a library, then it's the government's place to say that no, you cannot publish this book, and hence it doesn't even get to the library. That is what we are proposing. So now, moving on with my own extensive argument about the backlash. How censorship works in real life is that the cases of hate speech or whatever in real life are very
madam.
Please stop yelling at me, madam. We see that the cases are very individual kind of. We see that there are many variables included, and there are many entities who can control it. For example, we have the government, we have the public, we have the way how people take in and interpret some messages. So we think it's a very kind of individual case. What we do think would happen under the opposition's model was that well, you will have one or many search engines, and they will now somehow control everything, all of the world's internet, all of the hate speech, etc. We don't think that could, happen manually, or it would happen manually, but it wouldn't be very case specific, because you will have some kind of algorithms, you will have some kind of keywords that the system will then try to identify and say hate speech by. We don't think that is really efficient, because we have seen how people in the past, and people still roaming the internet, will find a way around all certain kinds of algorithms we impose. We think people will just very quickly learn to use some other kinds of keywords, and the system hence will never be efficient what they are proposing to us. Secondly, we say that even if they catch some people, say, doing hate speech under their model, we think it is already very not likely that the hate speech would even occur in some, say newspaper, because we think it is very directly in the interest of the websites to remove that material immediately. We say there is government pressure. We already think hate speech is bad, and it certainly kind of misrepresents your website as a whole. You don't want that bad material being in there, because then people will see that we don't accept this as a society, and we generally think it's not something good to have on your website. So we think we already have this kind of self-regulating system, and we don't need it. Secondly, the second scenario that would happen is that the system just gets too strict. It puts too many keywords, it learns like many word combinations, and will eventually start catching people or catching, say, articles that are not even inherently bad, just because the algorithm and the keywords that are not manually controlled, and you don't have all those kind of variables that you have in real life. Then we can see that a lot of mistakes could be made because you know how this one entity to control all of the world's internet and all of the content that gets presented in the internet, and we don't think it is firstly the responsibility, and second, we don't think it is efficient. For all of those reasons, I beg you to propose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I recognize the second speaker of the opposition.
Now they've completely misconstrued our entire case because we've never once said that we're going to hold search engines accountable or responsible for the type of information that is sent out to the public. We're only making sure that these search engines are going to help in the process of ensuring that these information or the product of websites that are detrimental to society isn't going to be disseminated into society because of its harmful effects. Therefore, we showed you today, when they told us that media is responsible, they never really characterized for us what media is. Therefore, we can show you now what it really is. Because when they said media, this entails the people who upload articles or upload articles, opinions on the internet, and also includes sites that publish opinions, news, or videos. And that is exactly why we can't let the media be the ones that are going to be the main mediator of the situation at hand, which is what they are going to push for. Because media is the people that are going to be the ones spreading the sort of harmful information that we are talking about. Therefore, we need a separate mediator, not the person himself or herself that's already disseminating or publishing such articles that might be detrimental. Instead, we need a mediator, and in this case, is the search engine. Because the search engine is the window or the avenue or the door in between the websites and the articles that they produce to the readers. Therefore, we need to ensure that there has to be a separate mediator, and we cannot rely on the media themselves, who are the ones that are producing such articles, to be doing that. Therefore, the entire point on how media will be responsible falls, because in the first place we showed you how media is exactly the type of people that will be publishing such articles that could pose a threat to society. No, thank you, sir. And they also told us that the vendor is not responsible, and we say yes, they aren't, but they have to be responsible in helping us cut down on the types of articles that's disseminated to the public. That is the distinction we made from the very start, and they never properly understood that. So moving on to their content, to their substantives on efficiency, in which they told us it's not case specific, and therefore it can't be efficient because we'll be cutting down on too many articles with the sense, with the words, the key words we told you about. So therefore, what their side is essentially saying when they told us it's not efficient is basically saying because it's not efficient and because too many articles we cut down from the internet, we just simply won't want to do anything about it. So exactly what they're saying, but we're just going to let the media do anything they want because in the first place, we're unable to cut down on it from the very start. And we tell you that this is problematic because you're still allowing the proliferation of such terrorist organizations to keep posting and pushing their ideologies or the videos on such as the ISIS propaganda that we already see in status quo. And to that, they've never actually come back on that, on our substantive, my first speaker, on terrorism, and how it proliferates. And they've never come back to us on that point. And they also told us that hate speech won't occur in the first place because it is not the advantage of the websites to have it on display. But the very idea is that they misunderstood that these websites, certain websites, are responsible and actually have the main intention of producing such articles promote hate speech, promoting articles that do put down certain races or religions. Therefore, these websites and the media essentially are irresponsible people that cannot properly manage what kind of articles that they want to send out to public. Therefore, we need the search engines to come in to make sure that they filter out the harmful material from the very start. Therefore, not allowing society to gain their hands on it because of the very aspect that is detrimental to society. But before I move on, yes, ma'am.
The websites you are talking about are the ones that are already prohibited and the ones that government is already moving.
Ma'am, then by that assumption or that logic that you gave us about how you didn't want governments to be responsible or cooperating in any of the banning or shutting down of websites, your side wouldn't have them shut down in the first place. Because when you started out in your first speaker, you said clearly that you don't want any cooperation with governments, you don't want governments to say anything on what the search engines can publish in the first place. Therefore, these websites publishing will still be there. And even if these governments manage to shut down, the problem is when you still allow search engines to publish it, you allow the avenue or the window of time in which these articles can appear on the internet. Therefore, telling you that there is a span of time in which people can gain access to it, and we say that it is so detrimental because you don't even want it arising in the social sphere in the first place because it is so detrimental. And anyway, we made a concession on their side because we kept pushing them on things on websites that's so detrimental, and to that they said that we already have websites being shut down in any way, conceding to the fact that yes, the internet can have harmful websites. The media produces things that are not going to be proper or let's say safe for the people to consume, and therefore we showed you on our side because we recognize the problem, we have a solution in which on their side they recognize the problem but have yet to give us a solution because they told us it's simply not efficient enough. No thank you, sir. In which they also brought up the point about the deep web. We already rebutted that point for you by telling you that because we believe that when you censor things on mainstream media, when you don't censor things on mainstream media, the things from the deep web will then arise in the mainstream, therefore allowing more people to gain access, therefore harming more people in the process. No, thank you, sir. So let me move on to my substantives for today on saving more lives. Now, when we censor certain results, we do this because we understand that certain results can harm people in society, especially because the internet is becoming more and more universal with more different ideas, perspectives, and ideas. Therefore, it is so easy to find certain information, and people can get information that can empower them to kill or harm other people. Getting access to such information on how to construct bombs with fertilizers, or pressure cookers, or all daily appliances. And we saw this happen in the Boston Marathon bombings in 2013, where the two brothers that had planted the bomb had read the article, How to Make a Bomb in Your Mother's Kitchen, and they used a pressure cooker and glass shards to then injure the people in the country. It shows us how if we allow these sorts of websites to exist, where it offers radicals and individuals to hold people's lives at ransom, you're only going to harm society at the end of the day. With such articles, we make it so much more easier for lone wolf attacks to occur because only one person needs to get the materials and follow the instructions on the internet to actually carry it out. On our side, when we censor these websites from the start, we don't allow people to get access to these sites because we value prevention over cure when it comes to people's lives in the first place. So on the second substantive, on safer grounds for children. Now, search engines and the internet are further being used by the education system and children in the first place. Increasing numbers of children have direct access to those areas, therefore exposing them to any and every website, which won't be advantageous because these children don't have the cognitive ability or the mental maturity to decide what is right, what is wrong, and the pros and cons of certain situations. Therefore, it is necessary for search engines to filter out the harmful material from the very start, such as hate speech, or certain articles that promote discrimination against certain races or religions. Therefore, if exposed to young impressionable children, they aren't able to discern the right and wrong, therefore carrying such cancerous ideas into society. And in some cases, for pornography as well, children don't know enough information or to know that what they're getting themselves into, or don't know what kind of system they're fueling when they keep watching pornography, especially necessary because our children now already have access into easy access to the internet in the very first place. Therefore, we have to protect them from the various harmful views that these certain sites allow proliferate into the media because search engines don't exist on their side to filter it out in the very first place. So therefore, because we value safety and the lives of people over privacy, because we recognize the rights people have over lives are far more tantamount to what they think is more important, in which they never really clearly stated for us, and because we recognize that the media is irresponsible and therefore we needed a mediator, and in this case it's a search engine, we are really the ones that provide a solution to the problem.
you for that speech, and I invite the first speaker of the position to deliver it.
We Estonians might not have invented Skype, but we sure do know how the internet works, and that's why we're going to win this debate. I'm extremely happy to be here to tell you that it's harmful content on the internet that actually matters and that actually creates harm, not just one site that allows you to access it, right? Because there are a million other ways how to find an instruction how to make a bomb. I would like to conclude this debate from the team proposition side in 2 points. First, we talk about responsibility. Secondly, the effectiveness of the opposition's model and comparing it with ours and showing you why our model is 10 times as effective as theirs. So firstly, let's tackle the points about responsibility. The first thing we heard from the team opposition was that we have made a huge contradiction in the team opposition. Because we told you that we support banning hate speech, for example, or child porn, or sites that traffic with guns. But that's exactly what the opposition is doing too. Therefore, we contradict ourselves if we say that their model is not working. Mr. Speaker, this is not true. We do not have to protect hate speech. We do not have to protect child pornography. What we're saying is that our mechanism is more justified and secondly more effective, and that's what we have to prove you. And the second thing we heard was that Google, Bing, Yahoo, Yandex, all these internet search engines are responsible for the atrocities that some sites cause because they distribute the info. They are the ones who make it available for the general public. Firstly, we say if this is true, would team opposition also start banning server providers? Would they also start abusing Apple because they are the ones who produce computers? Without the computer, I cannot access the internet, I cannot find the instruction how to make that bomb and go to that Boston Marathon they talk about, right? So we say this is an inherent contradiction in their case. We say that the only ones who are responsible for the content are the ones who publish it, and these are the publications or the individuals if they don't publish it under some kind of a publication, right? The last thing they said is that they're not saying that the internet search engines are responsible, but we're just going to use them for our good. Well, we say that in our Western liberal democracies, we need to have a proper justification to start, working or setting regulations on some kind of an industry, right? We see that they haven't shown us why we have that justification, right? Now, talking about the second point, the effectiveness and the impact of their model and why our model works best. The first thing we heard was that actually it's totally impossible for our Western governments to regulate the internet, to regulate harmful content, and to filter it. No, thank you. We say no because of 2 reasons. Firstly, we are already doing it. We're actively banning harmful sites, and that's the reason why you can't find actually a drug trafficker if you search it from Google, right? Because we have already banned these sites, and no one wants to do it because they will go to jail or at least be punished. The second thing is that in some countries we're also starting the practice that we force people to identify themselves if they want to comment on something or if they want to publish something. So we are saying that in all occasions you should not be anonymous in the internet, and this is one case how we can limit hate speech, for example. And we strongly support it, and we should do it in any Western country and with any media publication, for example. Right. The second thing they told us is that we have great alternatives under the opposition's model. We have child filters that filter out porn, for example, and we can report to the authorities. Well, firstly, against the child filters, we totally agree with that. We say the publications can do that, and they are the most effective agents to do that. In a second, and about reporting to authorities, of course, we are fine with that. If Google sees that some person is actively searching how to build a bomb, they should report that person. Yes?
So we don't even harm the search engine's interest when we ensure that they don't publish or let out the sites that are harmful to society.
Okay, even if you do that, your mechanism is not effective and it's not justified. I don't see why we have to show you why the search engine as the company is going to be damaged, right? Now the third thing they said about their effectiveness was that we are entering a new era of terrorism. An era of terrorism where ISIS is on Twitter, where ISIS is on Facebook, where they're recruiting actively members to join them and to fight for them, and that the fact that we don't regulate the internet, that we don't censor some things, is directly responsible for the fact that some people are fighting for ISIS and killing other people, right? That was like immensely big point in their case. Well, we say that this is just simply not how censorship works, because you read ISIS tweets, you find them because other people have retweeted them. You find them because they are popular, other people are sharing them. No, thank you. You do not find ISIS tweets by Googling what ISIS has tweeted, right? Because Twitter is a separate environment. It's not the same environment as Google. We say that Google has no authority or no capability to actually tackle this, because they are different environments and they can't interact with each other. And that's why our information is so much better in a second, because we can tell Twitter that they will have to ban the ISIS account from the Twitter environment, and therefore we will also destroy the harmful content. Under the opposition's model, this harmful content will stay and people still can find it. Yes?
Currently, when it's so easy to publish articles from the public, it's extremely hard for governments to crack down on it. The search engines are the best way because they do so by algorithms and machines.
No, we say that governments can very effectively tackle this problem. They can, even if we can't do it very effectively right now, we agree that maybe we should, in some cases, make punishments tougher, right? Allocate more resources to tackling that. But we believe that we should be very case specific, and Google, for example, cannot regulate and censor the whole internet we have, like in our world. We say they simply just don't have the resources to do that effectively, and that's what opposition never answered to. Now the next thing we heard under effectiveness point was that the deep web will come back to the internet if Google stops censoring some things. Well, we say no, this is just isn't real, because the moment you enter, like the regular internet, the indexed web, governments will crack you down, they will find it. That's the reason why you can't find guns online, right? So there's no incentive for the supplier to sell, there's no incentive for the consumer because they want to hide their identity. And we're not saying that we should allow arms trafficking, but we're saying that we can tackle that also under our model. We can just ban these sites and no one wants to come to the real internet. Now, then they say that we actually can't control individuals. We might be able to control media publications, but we can't control individuals. We say no, because in the real world, in the world of paper newspapers, we can also control everyone. Therefore, we believe that you will have no incentive to publish hate speech if you know we're going to get punished for that. And the last thing they mentioned was something about the Boston Marathon and some guy had a bomb. Well, firstly, we say we should ban the site that actually gave instructions how to build a bomb from a pressure cooker or whatever. And secondly, you can still find out from the deep web, for example, how to build a bomb. We haven't seen any mechanism how team opposition is tackling that problem. So for all of these reasons, I'm extremely happy to propose today.
Thank you, and I invite the opposition's third speaker.
It is quite clear that side opposition has agreed with us that the internet is a dangerous place containing radical messages and all other bad things. And really the debate has boiled down to one thing: which side is best able to censor out this harmful information? They kept telling us that the media should self-censor, that government should clamp down. But what they failed to recognize right from the start of today's debate is that we don't live in the age of newspapers and books anymore. Right now, people get access to the information from the internet. It's very easy for me to go back to my hotel right now and publish an article radicalizing other people. And therefore it's impossible for the government to clamp down on every single article, every single opinion piece that is published on the internet. It is impossible to expect everyone within society to only publish articles that are fair, that do not discriminate against certain racial or religious groups. Therefore, in the age of information technology, we need the help of these vendors to clamp down on the information. We need the help of search providers to clamp down on this information, because that is the most effective way. Bearing this framework in mind, let's look at two questions for the House today. Which side is best able to censor this information and the implications of their policy? On the first question, on which side is best able to censor this information? And they told us right from the first speaker that the media should self-censor. But as I told you at the start of my speech, right now the media is not only simply things like newspapers or books, but a person sitting at home publishing an article on his forum, he is also part of the media right now, because it's so easy to do so in the age of the internet. Therefore now it's very easy for you to publish an article criticizing a certain racial or religious group. For example, this is what ISIS is doing right now, right? They're publishing thousands of articles, thousands of videos on the internet every single day. And therefore it's impossible to expect every member in society to publish an article that is fair, that does not discriminate against anyone. Therefore, right now in the 21st century, we need the help of these search engines using the algorithms, using the keyword systems to clamp down on these articles. We simply cannot expect the media to do it themselves, the media to self-censor, because the media now is made up of everyone within society. And the reason why we can't file child pornography from the internet is not because the government is banning every website. I'm sorry, that is impossible, because there are thousands of websites that are uploaded every single day. It's because the search providers are clamping down on access to these child pornography websites. Their own example works against them. Then they also told us this whole idea that the government should take responsibility. And as I've already showed you, it's simply impossible for any government to trawl through the vast expanse of the internet and clamp down on every single article, clamp down on every single video that discriminates against certain racial or religious groups or radicalizes people. Therefore, the most effective way to do so is to ask these search engines to help us, to use the algorithms, to use the keyword systems, and prevent access to these articles. This is something they failed to tackle with right when they gave our first POI in their first proposition speech. Then they also told us that ours is a bit of a slippery slope, right? Are we going to go after Apple and are we going to ban computers and things like that? But let me tell you something. If a person is clearly radicalized, he clearly has extremist ideas, then yes, we will not sell him a computer. We are fine with biting the bullet in this case. Then they also told us that darknet contains all information and our policy will have little impact. But the fact of the matter is that your radical and terrorist groups attempt to penetrate the mainstream media, right? Because they know in the mainstream media, that's when the information will spread more easily. Therefore, we need the help of these search providers to clamp down access to this information, because it's simply impossible for the government to do so. It's simply impossible to expect the media to self-censor. And therefore, we're comparing what's happening in status quo right now. In status quo right now, Google is clamping down on this information. Bing is clamping down on access to this information. That is why all the information is moving towards the dark net. And as my first speaker already showed you, it's impossible to access this information in the dark net. Again, their own substantive works against them, because they agree that the dark net contains all of this information. We showed you the reason for this is because search engines are clamping down on access and preventing this information from getting to the mainstream media. Then let's look at the second question today's debate, the implications of that policy. And here they told us this whole idea about a public backlash, how people will get angry if the system gets too strict. But let's look at this clearly, right? This public backlash exists on their side as well. Because what they're standing for is the government clamping down on these articles, right? So even under their model, the system can get very strict, the government can clamp down on many articles, and therefore there will be much public backlash on their side as well. So at the best, this is a wash. But before I move on, yes sir.
You told us that under the status quo, Google and Bing are already censoring things. Why do we have this now a problem of new era of terrorism with ISIS?
Exactly, sir. We are clamping down on these things, that's why the problem is reducing. On your side, when we prevent them from clamping down on these things, these problems become even larger. At least we are making the situation better. We agree, the situation is not perfect on your side, it's not perfect on our side, but we make the situation better because we enlist the help of the search providers to clamp down on access. Your side simply expects ISIS to not publish articles at all and self-censor. That really won't work anyways. Then they also told us this funny point that the media will not display hate speech and things like that because it's not in their interest to do so, right? But as I've already shown you, these media, we're not talking about established companies, we're not talking about established newspapers anymore. We're talking about a person at home who can go home, who has no incentive to actually care about his revenues or profits, who will just simply publish a hate speech article because that's what he believes in, that's what he thinks of himself. And therefore with this hate speech article, with this hate speech video, he can radicalize thousands of people and thousands of people will join his channel. No, thank you, all three of you. Then let's go to, then let's be okay from our first substantive. This this whole idea about terrorist groups, right? How groups such as ISIS are now exploiting the internet, publishing articles, publishing videos, radicalizing thousands of young Muslims around the world to join their caliphate. And as I already showed you in my first speaker, more followers means more legitimacy for ISIS. The third speaker actually agreed that under their side, we cannot do it effectively anymore. So what they're effectively conceding to now is that we should not do anything to counter ISIS propaganda. We should allow ISIS to go away. We should allow them to use their propaganda to radicalize thousands of people and kill thousands of people in the process. We simply refuse to stand by this. For example, let me also tell you in a third substantive how it's very easy for someone to now go on the internet and simply find out how to make a bomb, using this bomb to kill many people. They said, don't worry, the governments will ban all these websites, the media will self-censor. Then tell me something, why was it so easy for these Boston bombers to go on the internet and find an article on how to make a bomb in your mother's kitchen? If it's so easy for the government to clamp down on all these websites, how did they get access to this website in the first place? After they got access to this website, the government realized that they cannot clamp down on all of these articles on their own. Therefore, they enlisted the help of Google to ensure that all of these articles are passed out, and therefore our side does it better in our case. Let me also tell you this whole idea about how it's safer for children, because children simply don't have the cognitive maturity to decide what is best for them and what is not good for them, and therefore parents should have an incentive to self-censor. Again, back to the same old logic. Don't worry, the government will clamp down. I already showed you we cannot expect the government to clamp down anyways, and I've also shown you why it's better for the parents to have autonomy over what their children does, to self-censorship and things like that, by adding it to their filters. And they also conceded to this. This is a huge concession from their side. Their third speaker said, we are okay with Google reporting questionable things to the police. That's a huge concession. Because the first speaker said that no, vendors have no responsibility, yet the third speaker said, yes, vendors do have responsibility, yes, they should report these things to the police. A huge concession from their side, and it's too late for them to resolve it right now. And finally, in a final argument, we gave you this whole idea about hierarchy to rights. How your right to life is important for you to actually self-actualize. Because without your right to life, you don't have things such as your right to freedom of speech, your right to privacy, which is something they are arguing for. Because they can argue all they want about right to freedom of speech and right to privacy. But if you don't have your right to life, if you allow all these terrorist groups to prosper, if you allow all these people to find out how to make a bomb and kill thousands of people in the process, if you do not have even this right to life, you will not have any of your other rights. And therefore, our side does it better. Because our side is best able to censor this information, because our side best reduces the implications of the harmful things on the internet we take to this debate.
Thank you, and I invite Esther to the
Three big concessions, contradictions, and unable to push through with their policy, the mistakes they made were three clear big things. Firstly, the first thing they said in the very start was that we didn't want any cooperation with the government, therefore we won't censor anything. Yet in the end of the third speaker, and with the second speaker also implying it, they said the government is efficient at censoring by cooperating with such search engines, and thus are able to clamp down. That was the first concession. Second thing they said was that they need to censor hate speech, and yet they told us, and yet even when we told us that that was the problem that we both recognized, and we both believe we have to censor, they've never given us a proper solution to that anyway. Third big thing was that the search engines cannot be responsible, but yet throughout the speeches they kept on implying they still will be responsible because they will still confer with the government, they will still report back to the government, and yet in the first speaker they made clear from the start that they didn't want them to be responsible. So two main clashes for today's debate. Firstly, on which side enforces the most effective solution to the problem, and secondly, on which side best protects the people. So the first part on which side enforces the best alternative, the way to solve the problem, in which we showed you the debate was mainly about two things, in which they pushed for the side on media, enforcing how media will be able to regulate themselves, and the media will be responsible enough to ensure that such detrimental material or hate speech won't be let out to the public, while on our side we pushed for search engines. And we showed you how this works in the current situation, where the media and the search engines and readers and consumers stand side by side, and the search engines are really the ones that are the mediators, in which the media publishes and lets go of the news and such opinions, and search engines are the ones that let it pass on to the readers and consumers. And we stressed how, because they are neutral mediator, because they are neutral, they are best able to discern what to filter out. And we showed you how on our side, with our effective policies such as algorithms and etc. and keywords, we are best able to filter out from the very start. But yet on their side, when they told us about media, we defined it for you clearly, because they didn't define it for us, that the media now is so advanced where anyone can go on any computer and access the internet and upload anything. These people are now part of the media. The media now can be anyone, and because of that very aspect, anyone can post anything and everything. The media is unable to regulate itself because of the radicals and individuals that won't censor themselves, and therefore we need the search engines to do it for us, because the media is irresponsible, and the media is the root of the problem that they already conceded to the very fact that it existed in the very first place. Therefore, also the next debate that we had was whether we held search engines accountable. We told you that we won't hold them accountable about certain information that is released on the internet, because we still track down the people that disseminate harmful information. That part wasn't lost on our side. But the very fact is that we recognize that search engines are key in helping that these information does not get proliferated in society's sphere. Therefore, we are the ones that best stop the proliferation of harmful material. And secondly, the big clash on which side best protects the people, in which we gave you certain members of society, such as children and just the normal individual in society. And we gave you that perspective of terrorists as well, in which they only rebutted to in the third speaker, telling us that this won't even happen in the first place, but also telling us that the media will be responsible, although we categorize it for you that these people are part of the media, and because they have the intention through their websites to proliferate such an idea, they won't be regulated and they won't censor themselves. Therefore, because the search engines don't allow it to be filtered out from the very start, there is still a span or a window of time in which people can gain access to such information, and thus only increasing the types of tension that we explained to you. And the points of children, they never properly came back to us, although we highlighted you to the fact that this is increasingly large number of audience members from children that will be able to get access to such websites. Therefore, because we showed you the clear characterization of what media really entails and why they won't be able to be the proper type of mediator that they really want on their side, because they conceded to the problem, we gave you the proper solution of search engines.
Thank you, and I invite Tanya to relax.
Thank you for the floor, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to talk about two things. I'm going to talk about responsibility, and I'm going to talk about tackling the issues or saving lives point that they made so important. But let's start with a few unanswered questions. So, team opposition actually never answered to a few points. First of all, they talk about how the search engines are the mediators. Well, I think that from the start of the debate we had some confusion regarding how we would solve the problem differently. What we would do as team opposition would just remove the content. If that content is deemed to be a violence, is deemed to be a threat to society, if that content is the same guide of making a bomb, we would remove it. But what team opposition would do is just remove it from the search engine, so therefore people can find it if they type into Google how to make a bomb, right? But they can still find that same site there. Now, this distinction here, this big difference is we actually solve the problem more efficiently, since if the site doesn't exist, you just can't find it on Google. Okay, okay, now, regarding responsibility, all they've talked to us about is that the media is inherently bad, therefore they can't regulate themselves, therefore we have to step in as the government, etc. Now, the media self-regulates itself. For example, if that same newspaper wants to be popular or they don't want to get punished by the government, they have to abide the rules. They can't publish hate speech. They can't make guides about making bombs, since they will get punished, or we will just close them down if we see that they have a threat to society. Secondly, they never answer to the point of how the content creators are inherently responsible for this. The individuals are responsible, not Google, that just categorizes it, makes it available, gives people the chance to find it. They are not inherently responsible for anything in this situation. Yet they still want to use this same search engines for their good. The only justification they got was that they're saving lives. Okay, yeah, we will save lives also, for example, but the deep web will still exist. You're oversight, you're marginalizing all your impact. The impact will still be small. The deep web will still exist. You will never have the chance to actually solve this issue entirely. No, both of them. But we will at least have the justification to use the government to our end goal. Secondly, okay, so the issues we're talking about here concern to the fact that they never answer to Elizabeth's extension also, that the algorithms we're talking about, for example, they can misfire. The chance that they use the same keywords, for example, since no algorithm is perfect, as you know, you will always have backfire. You might remove certain articles that are totally normal from the search engines. And we see, even if that isn't that big of an issue, we still want people to get access to the information they have challenged. That is deep worthy. We want people to find that information if the government doesn't restrict it entirely. Yet, if we can actually absolutely derive from the fact that if we use algorithms, this will happen. Now, we talked about how searching, for example, if an article has 1,000 readers, then the site will be deemed popular. This talk was how we can find these sites, but the non-popular sites, they will pop up anyway. You'll have to take a big portion of your time to actually find these articles and these sites. So yeah, we're not saying we'll remove everything, but the popular ones will be removed. For example, if a site has 1,000 readers and an article has 1,000 readers on a guide how to make a bomb, it will be deemed popular by the search engine. It will pop up, we can remove it, therefore the issue will be solved. Therefore, no, both of these sites aren't dealing absolutes. We are not saying we'll solve the issue entirely, but at least we are not using a search engine to get to our goal with no justification whatsoever. And secondly, we actually have a more effective solution if we remove the content, and therefore we actually won this debate. So that I make it so.